in a second. There we go. Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to introduce Angela. Angela is expert in emotions and teaching people about that. So our education system today, I know that, Angela, you've been working on a program where each week you've spoken, you've added more to it each week. So after today, and you've loved today's session, go back and check on the Be Connected World Network and find the previous ones and have a look at those as well. So over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, let me screen share. Okay. Yep. All right. Okay, so today we're talking about boundaries. So the last two sessions we've had, I've talked about needs and emotions, and we're going to get to that in a minute. So first, I want to talk about what boundaries are, the different types of boundaries, and then the different styles of boundaries. I'm also going to talk very quickly about how boundaries, needs, and emotions are connected, and then of course, we're going to talk about any questions that you may have. So I like starting out with definitions because it's always really clear what things are about. So boundaries are guidelines that we create for ourselves that allow other people to behave around us in such a way that we feel safe and that we can actually say that we have tools to respond when somebody steps beyond those limits. So it's the ability to say yes and no with conviction. So the reasons we have boundaries is because we have a culture, and you may remember this, I've had this in the previous sessions as well. So this is the cultural iceberg. And so we define our internal boundaries and below the surface of the iceberg because of all the things that we do not necessarily discuss, but that are part of our culture. And then externally, how do we represent those? So for example, architecture will have boundaries. Also, how we handle emotions will have external boundaries. So it's okay sometimes for little kids to roll around on the supermarket floor and have a temper tantrum, but it's not that great for a 25-year-old executive to do that anymore. So we set these boundaries up in such a way that they become acceptable to us and the people around us. We also have boundaries around language, for example, what language is appropriate. So they're all reflections of what's underneath the iceberg surface. So why do they, and I'm going to start this right at the beginning so you don't go, why is she talking about boundaries? What does this have to do with business? It has a lot to do with business. If you don't have boundaries, chances are you're going to be stressed, overworked, and your business may not be flourishing. So first and foremost, you show people that you are a professional by setting up boundaries. I work with people who work on the weekend and who are always available 24/7. That does not necessarily show that you're professional, and it does not necessarily enhance trust and credibility. It just probably just stresses you out and shows people that they can do with you whatever they want. I talk to people and say, well, can you set up different, if you need to do something with a quick turnaround, increase your fee, have 50% more or whatever it is. And people go, oh, I will lose my client. My experience is that if you set boundaries, people respect them, and you will be able to manage expectations and responsibilities much more easily. The other thing that happens when you set boundaries is you become more productive because you manage distractions much more readily, and you can maintain your goal focus. A lot of the times people just go back and forth, and this is the multitasking thing. They work on the computer, they talk on the phone, they have meetings, they overlap in meetings. I was just talking to Pedro and I said, I've come from meeting to meeting to meeting this morning. And he said, well, put some, gaps in between. I said, I did that. It's just that sometimes people go over the limit, and that's called, passing a boundary. So again, you maintain your goal focus and you improve your decision making. And really importantly, it helps you prevent misunderstandings. Conflict is often because people have different sets of boundaries, and if you don't discuss them, it's going to get difficult. So eventually what you do when you work with different people, or even also at home, obviously, all of this applies to home as well, you create much more harmony because people know when you say yes and no, you mean it. And you know when they say yes and no, they mean it. And it just creates so much clarity. The problem is a lot of people are afraid to actually stand up for that. They just hope that somebody will manage it for them. On the other hand, you also have, you create better communication because you define what is acceptable and what isn't. But what is really important is that you actually do this with self-awareness and with self-care. It all starts with you. If you expect other people to have boundaries, but you don't have any, I'll talk about that in a little while, it can go pear-shaped as well. So what you get is you get more confidence and autonomy. And of course, you don't take work home. You can actually separate things out and therefore prevent burnout and have more inner peace. So it's all about respect. It's really all about how do you want your relationships to work? How much drama do you want in your life? I literally know people who'd rather not have boundaries because they don't want to give up the drama. But having a really comfortable, quiet life, there's something to be said about that. When you can do your work, when you can manage your relationships, when you can be healthy, you can do what you want to, and you do it in harmony with the people around you. So very quickly, have you got any idea what kind of types of boundaries there are? No? Who's ever thought of boundaries before? As in consciously, what kind of types? Of course, Sharon. So we've got physical boundaries. So we've got the, don't come into my personal space. We've got the emotional boundaries, which it's the don't tell me how I should feel. And we do this all the time. If there's one thing that I would love to eliminate from people's vocabulary, it's the don't you make me feel, because nobody can make us feel. They're mental boundaries. It's the whole thing of telling people what to think. I'm working with some people at the moment who basically just tell each other the whole time what the other person is thinking. But the problem is the other person never agrees. So that can create some really difficult scenarios. We also have spiritual and religious boundaries where we respect or disrespect somebody else's beliefs. Then, of course, there are sexual boundaries that are also important at work, financial and material boundaries, as well as time. And then last but not least, they're always the ones that are non-negotiable. So those are the boundaries that you have for yourself that nobody can cross. And if you don't know what they are, then my suggestion would be really think about those, because if you don't know what your boundaries are, you're probably going to be at the mercy of other people, and you will probably be stressed and likely unhappy. So there are 4 types of boundaries, and they are the soft boundaries, which is basically the word that describes somebody with soft boundaries. Yes, they say yes to everything. So you will have, this is the problem, is that also they just want to have the sense of belonging. So they don't take your needs into consideration. So if you have them at a party or at a business meeting, they will continue talking whilst you're sitting there in your pajamas already, or working on your phone and indicating that you've already gone. But they don't see that. They just have this need for belonging. So they will stay around. Then there are rigid boundaries. And rigid boundaries is somebody who knows, they tell people, they know exactly who they are and what they want to do, and nobody will get in the way of that. And so their word is generally no. If you ask them to do something, they will go no. And so when you look at those, they look very different. One has no boundaries and somebody has lots of them. But on the inside, the person with rigid boundaries generally doesn't have boundaries either. I call these people steel-coated marshmallow. So they're really soft on the inside, but they've got steel on the outside that protects them. So I've got clients who say when they have a reputation at work, when they're really strong and they are authoritative, and they say, oh, well, you should know me at home. I'm a real teddy bear. And I go, yeah, but why would you do that? Why would you want to be authentic? Would you not want to be authentic and have boundaries that communicate the opposite, which is marshmallow coated steel, which is much more approachable for people? So the third type is called spongy boundaries, and you may remember that I talked about external locus of control. This is where other people determine your boundaries. So you can say yes or no, but it depends on who is asking. So you may say yes a lot at work to things at work because you don't want to lose the client, but then your partner on the weekend asks you to do something and you will go, no, I'm not doing that, because you feel that you can say it with one person, but you can't do it with the other. The flexible boundaries person has an internal locus of control, and they can say yes or no with confidence. These are the marshmallow coated steel people. They are the ones that are flexible. They can discuss things. They might have some leeway, but in the end, if you push them too hard, you will hit steel. And they will say, no means no, and yes means yes, but please do not push me any further. So I've got some tips for healthy boundaries, and they are very, very straightforward. And you probably have thought about all of those, but I would invite you to actually put those in place. Set ground rules. People don't set ground rules around boundaries and set clear expectations. So if you decide which behaviors are appropriate and inappropriate, you can actually set ground rules at work, and you can create a culture, as in, if you show up for a meeting 10 minutes late, we cancel the meeting, we reschedule. Anything like that. There are all sorts of things that if you wanted to think about those with regards to time, with regards to space, with regards to money, all of these rules apply. Be assertive. There are people who are really afraid that if they say no, they're going to lose people. But effectively, people you want to have around you are the ones that respect you. The ones who don't respect your no, you really want to be around those. So have an internal locus of control, and then of course be accountable. If you're not mindful of somebody else's boundaries, which can happen, because again, not everybody communicates their boundaries. And if you recognize that, or the other person gets irritated, just acknowledge it. Just notice. And then listen to your gut. If something feels off, if you don't feel safe, it's time to leave, or it's time to renegotiate. Manage your self-care. So boundaries, if you drink, if you're not hydrated, if you don't have enough sleep, if you eat crappy food, if you don't do the things that you need to do, be in nature, meditate, all of those things, you're probably going to drop your boundaries much more easily. Or if Sharon would say, if you don't process your trauma, you will probably have difficulties with boundaries. On the flip side, respect secrets. If somebody tells you that something is confidential, mind it. Manage your brand. So don't vent to people if you feel if it can go somewhere sideways. So manage your social media, manage who you talk to about what. And then model boundaries for others, because as a leader, you're creating new leaders, and you want to be a good example for people in that regard. And then, of course, respect needs and emotions, which leads me now to the connection between the last two presentations. So when you know how you feel, so that's the first thing. You need to know how you feel. You can identify your needs. So I feel frustrated because I am not getting results. My need for efficiency isn't being met. I'm feeling stimulated because my need for learning is being triggered. When you know your needs, then you can identify your boundaries, because you can say, so if I'm frustrated because I'm not getting my results, or, somebody is delaying, so somebody keeps delaying things and they're not meeting the deadlines, so then I can renegotiate that because my boundaries are not working. And when you know your boundaries, you can trust yourself, and then you can create great results, and you can work with people in a much, much more structured, harmonious, and effective and empathetic way. So again, thank you for your attention. And if you would like to do the quiz with me and find out about your human skills and then have a chat with me, please feel free to connect.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Angela. Yeah, as you said about boundaries, one of the things that I've done with anyone can do my online courses because they're sitting on a platform where people can sign up. But my master courses now, they have to actually pass an interview to see whether they're the right stuff for me to train before I go ahead. So once I put that boundary in place, the quality of people I got who were coming through improved straight away, and I got more clients as well. So putting boundaries in actually improves your business. It doesn't stifle it. So Stuart, you got a question there, mate?
Oh, absolutely, and I completely agree that in that initial onboarding with a client, if you set those boundaries right from the get-go when it comes to meetings, your availabilities, it stops those awkward conversations, because then you'd have to learn how to have awkward conversations. That's a whole other topic.
Oh yeah,
But,
that will come.
That's the one. And I've got a classic one where there was no time limits for a client where I love being responsive, but I just said, look, I'll be responsive between these times and these times. Outside of these times, this is what to expect. So that way we're both on the same page. If something's blowing up, then absolutely I'm there. But But if it's just a question, there might be a slight delay. And then straight away it was also, I understand you were busy. Or I'll say, there's going to be family time. A question for you there is like, how do you frame so that it doesn't sound, some people feel like including family time and boundaries can be a brick wall, but what do you feel about framing times and family time in with your working relationship? How do you see that sitting?
There's a presupposition that you need to excuse yourself for wanting to have family time. I don't think you need to find any kind of excuse. I think you can just say this is family time, period. That's one of the advantages of being an adult. You don't have to justify yourself. I think as long as people know that you're doing your job really well and that you're delivering on time, nobody will question any kind of necessity for taking time out. None.
That's perfect. And it's really funny you said like excusing yourself or feeling like you need to justify as well. It's really funny. Some people can justify their clients' requests but can't justify their own. So I think that's a mindset thing as well. Absolutely. Yeah. That's brilliant.
Thanks, Stuart. Neville.
Yeah, just a comment here. The whole boundaries things and the transparency of making them clear to other people is really, really important. I know with my own business, some of the transparency that I put in place are outlined in things like terms of service. These are the kind of things that you can expect around the structure of what we do together, so that people can make the decision and they know what to expect. Letting people know when you're available and when you're not available, as Stuart mentioned, that's also really, really important. And just letting people know what will happen if they don't meet your expectation. What are the consequences of that? Sometimes that's really important to make that clear ahead of time, so that if something changes, they know exactly how to circumvent that consequence, or what you need from them to stop you from enforcing the consequence. I know for me, because I'm appointment based, I don't have a waiting list. I don't have people waiting in the wings to slot into spaces. So I just tell people that up front, I don't have a waiting list. If you don't show up for your appointment, I have an empty gap that I won't have time to fill. So if you don't show up for your appointment, because I do prepayment, you will have lost that. You will have lost the money for that.
Yeah.
What I need from you is at least 24 hours notice, so I've got time to go and fill that space. So, and most people are really good about that. So it's like they know this is what is going to happen, and this is why it's not a personal thing. This is just the way that it's working, and letting people know that this is how I work. Somebody else may work differently, but this is the way that I work, and not feeling like you need to downplay that or justify or make excuses or explain. This is my business. This is how I work. If you don't want to work with that, then maybe you need to work with somebody else. And the boundaries can actually clarify who's the right fit.
It's the whole non-negotiable thing. You don't argue with a red traffic light. You don't go, what do you mean you're red? I need to go now. You just stop, right? Yeah.
I always ask people, and that if the products and services that you deliver, does that help the other person? It's a great product and service. They go, yes. And I go, well, you've become a problem solver for them. You're not a salesperson anymore. You're a problem solver. So change the way you look at it. And if you don't present yourself in the right way, they won't take you on, which means you'll rob them of the opportunity of picking up those services that you had there for them. So as a mate of mine always says, go where you're celebrated, not just where you're tolerated. So by putting your boundaries in place, you've got more chance of being celebrated by people. Pedro.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to say, nice one, Angela. Very, very cool.
Thank you.
I love the way you identify that. If you're frustrated with a client, it's not typically their fault. It's your own fault for leaving the door open and letting them frustrate you by not setting those boundaries. So it's important to set the relationship up. The tip, we've got BDMs working for Boomerang, and they often do a lot of work at the weekend because they're busy during the week, and that's their prerogative. They're allowed to do that. And one tip we gave them was your email has a send timer on it. So if you're going to work at the weekend and respond to clients, set it so the email goes at 9 a.m. Monday morning, not 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. That's a bad door to open.
Yeah.
You're letting everybody know then that you're available at all times of the day and night if
Yep.
you don't. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Angela. I'll just find this recording button and stop that.